Staff Sergeant Sarah Mitchell, 28 years old, had been working silently in the Camp Phoenix kitchen for 2 years and 7 months. Every day at 0530 for prep, 0700 for breakfast service, 1300 for lunch, serving Delta Force Alpha Team as the Invisible Woman. She kept her hair in a tight bun, avoided eye contact, and responded to even, "How are you today?" with only a nod. When insurgent forces blasted through the compound walls and zip-tied 8 Delta operators, Sarah was the only person who remained calm amid the kitchen chaos. While civilian contractors were crying in panic, she reached behind the industrial oven and pulled out tactical gear that made everyone's blood run cold. That's when everyone realized who the quiet girl in the kitchen really was. Welcome to Hidden Story, where we uncover the extraordinary warriors hiding behind ordinary masks. Before we dive into this incredible story of hidden identity, tactical precision, and impossible rescue missions, tell us in the comments where you're watching from today. We read every single one and often respond. And if you believe stories of hidden heroes deserve to be remembered, hit that subscribe button and help us ensure they're never forgotten. Camp Phoenix sat like a concrete fortress in the scorching desert of western Iraq, its reinforced walls rising from endless sand dunes like a monument to American military presence in a region that had seen decades of conflict. The forward operating base housed 450 personnel, but its most valuable assets were the operators of Delta Force Alpha Team, 8 of the most elite warriors in the United States military, men who disappeared into hostile territory on missions that would never appear in declassified reports. The base's dining facility operated with military precision, serving 3 meals daily to personnel who depended on reliable nutrition to maintain peak physical and mental performance. At the center of this operation was Staff Sergeant Sarah "Ghost" Mitchell. Though none of the soldiers she served knew her rank, her background, or the reason she'd requested assignment to food service after 8 years of active combat duty. Sarah had earned her call sign during her 3rd deployment with the 75th Ranger Regiment, where her ability to move through hostile territory undetected had become legendary among special operations personnel. She'd completed Ranger School at the top of her class, earned expert marksman qualifications with 12 different weapon systems, and had been selected for the military's most classified direct action missions. The transformation from elite warrior to dining facility supervisor hadn't happened overnight. It had begun during Operation Desert Hawk, a classified mission in Syria that required her to eliminate a high-value target in a heavily defended compound. The mission was successful. The target was neutralized, critical intelligence was recovered, and her team extracted without casualties. But the psychological cost of that operation, combined with 7 years of continuous combat deployments, had left Sarah questioning whether she could continue making life-and-death decisions about other human beings. She'd requested transfer to support roles, citing personal reasons that her commanding officers respected without requiring detailed explanations. Warriors who'd given everything in service deserved the opportunity to step back when they needed to heal. The assignment to Camp Phoenix had seemed perfect. Her organizational skills and attention to detail made her an excellent dining facility supervisor, while her military experience helped her understand the nutritional and logistical needs of special operations personnel. For 2 years and 7 months, the arrangement had provided exactly what Sarah needed. She found peace in the routine of feeding soldiers instead of fighting enemies. She took satisfaction in ensuring the Delta Force Alpha Team was properly nourished and ready for their missions, knowing she was supporting their operations without having to participate directly in combat activities. The members of Alpha Team had accepted her presence with the casual respect that professional warriors showed toward competent support personnel. To them, she was simply Mitchell, the dining facility supervisor who made sure they ate well and who could be relied upon to have hot coffee ready when they returned from operations. They didn't ask personal questions, and she didn't volunteer information about her background. Alpha Team's leader was Major Jake Reaper Harrison, a 12-year veteran of special operations who'd earned his position through tactical brilliance and unshakable calm under pressure. His second in command was Master Sergeant Carlos Blade Rivera, a weapons specialist whose expertise with firearms was matched only by his ability to read tactical situations and adapt to changing circumstances. What none of them knew was that Sarah's daily routine included more than food preparation and kitchen management. Every morning at 04:30, before anyone else was awake, she conducted her own security assessment of the dining facility and surrounding areas. She knew the location of every entrance, every potential defensive position, every piece of equipment that could be weaponized if necessary. Behind the industrial oven, wrapped in waterproof materials and hidden among cleaning supplies, was a carefully assembled cache of weapons and tactical equipment. It wasn't paranoia. It was preparation based on 8 years of combat experience that had taught her violence could arrive without warning, and survival often depended on being ready for possibilities others never considered. On the morning of November 8th, those preparations became necessary. Sarah was conducting final prep for breakfast service when the first explosion shook Camp Phoenix's outer perimeter. The blast was powerful enough to rattle equipment in the kitchen, but distant enough that most personnel initially assumed it was routine demolitions or training activities. Sarah's combat-trained instincts immediately identified the sound as incoming rocket-propelled grenades, and her tactical mind began calculating threat vectors before the second explosion confirmed her assessment. The base alarm system activated 45 seconds later, filling the air with the distinctive wail that signaled "Condition Red, all personnel to defensive positions." Through the dining facility windows, Sarah could see soldiers running toward predetermined positions while officers coordinated response protocols through radio communications. But something was wrong with the attack pattern. The explosions were coming from multiple directions simultaneously, suggesting a coordinated assault by forces with detailed knowledge of the base's defensive layout. More concerning was the precision of the targeting. The attackers were hitting specific facilities rather than conducting random harassment fire. This wasn't opportunistic terrorism, it was a professional military operation. Sarah continued breakfast preparations while monitoring the developing situation through windows and radio chatter from security personnel. Her years of combat experience had taught her that maintaining normal routines provided crucial stability during crisis situations, while internally, her mind processed tactical information and prepared for possibilities that standard security protocols might not anticipate. The third wave of explosions was different, closer, more precise, targeting the base's communication equipment and power generation systems. Sarah watched through kitchen windows as systematic destruction eliminated Camp Phoenix's ability to call for reinforcements or coordinate with higher command. The attackers knew exactly how to isolate the base from outside support. That's when she saw the infiltration. Moving through smoke and confusion of the ongoing bombardment, figures in dark tactical gear were penetrating the base perimeter through sections that should have been impregnable. They moved with military precision, using proper cover and advancement techniques that indicated extensive training and combat experience. These weren't local insurgents. They were professional soldiers conducting a carefully planned operation. Sarah counted at least 16 infiltrators in the first wave, all armed with modern weapons and equipment that suggested significant financial backing and logistical support. They were advancing toward specific targets within the base, including the command center, communications facility, and, her blood ran cold as she realized their movement pattern, the Delta Force Alpha Team barracks. Through her kitchen window, Sarah watched as the attackers systematically surrounded the building where her team was housed. Alpha Team was trapped inside, caught during what should have been routine downtime between missions. They were the most dangerous operators on the base, but they were outnumbered 2-1 and caught in a tactically disadvantageous position. The battle for the Alpha Team barracks lasted exactly 9 minutes. Sarah timed it by the kitchen clock while she watched America's most elite warriors make their stand against overwhelming odds. The Delta operators fought with professional skill and coordinated tactics that had made them legendary. But they faced an enemy that had prepared specifically for this engagement and brought superior numbers to bear. One by one, she watched her team fall, not killed, but incapacitated. The attackers were using non-lethal weapons, suggesting they wanted prisoners rather than casualties. Major Harrison was the first to go down, struck by what appeared to be a tranquilizer dart while coordinating his team's defense. Master Sergeant Rivera lasted 2 minutes longer, eliminating 3 attackers before being overwhelmed. Within 12 minutes of the initial assault, Delta Force Alpha Team had been captured and was being systematically zip-tied and prepared for transport. Sarah watched through the kitchen window as the operators she'd served for over 2 years were loaded unconscious into vehicles that had appeared as if from nowhere. Professional kidnapping, executed with military precision against the most elite special operations unit in the American military. The base's regular security forces were dealing with their own problems. The coordinated assault had been designed to overwhelm defensive positions, while the real operation, the capture of Alpha Team, proceeded without interference. By the time base security realized what had happened, the Delta operators were already being transported toward whatever location their captors had prepared. Sarah stood in the dining facility kitchen, watching the vehicles disappear into the Iraqi desert, and felt something fundamental shift inside her. For nearly 3 years, she'd been Mitchell, the dining facility supervisor, a woman who'd chosen peace over war and found satisfaction in supporting others rather than fighting herself. But watching her team being taken prisoner had awakened something that no amount of kitchen duty could put back to sleep. She removed her hairnet and apron with movements that were calm, deliberate, and absolutely lethal in their implications. Behind the industrial oven, her hands found the waterproof case containing equipment she'd hoped never to touch again. The weight of the tactical knife felt familiar in her grip, as did the compact assault rifle and equipment that would allow her to track and engage targets in hostile territory. For the first time in 2 years and 7 months, Staff Sergeant Sarah "Ghost" Mitchell was back on active duty. The transformation was immediate and complete. The woman who emerged from the dining facility bore no resemblance to the quiet supervisor who'd entered it that morning. Sarah's posture had changed from submissive to predatory. Her movements acquired the fluid precision of a trained killer, and her eyes held the cold focus that came from transitioning mentally from protector to hunter. Her first priority was intelligence gathering. The attackers had been too well informed about the base's layout and Alpha Team's routines for this to be random. Someone with detailed access to classified information had provided intelligence to enemy forces, and identifying that person was crucial for both mission success and future security. Sarah made her way to the base's intelligence office, moving through smoke and confusion with tactical awareness that kept her invisible to panicking personnel and overwhelmed security teams. The facility's communication equipment had been damaged but not destroyed, and she was able to access emergency protocols that allowed her to reconstruct what had happened. The assault had been precisely timed to coincide with a shift change in security rotations, creating a 30-minute window when defensive positions were undermanned and coordination was compromised. The attackers had used that window to penetrate the perimeter, neutralize specific targets, and extract Alpha Team before effective resistance could be organized. More troubling was the intelligence precision that had made such coordination possible. The attackers had known not just the base's physical layout, but operational schedules, defensive protocols, and personnel assignments. That level of detailed information could only have come from someone with authorized access to classified materials. Sarah accessed the base's personnel database and cross-referenced security clearances with communication logs from the past 6 months. What she discovered confirmed her worst suspicions. Someone at Camp Phoenix had been providing information to enemy forces, creating the intelligence foundation that made Alpha Team's capture possible. The traitor was Captain Marcus Webb, the base's intelligence liaison, and the officer responsible for coordinating security briefings. His access to classified information was comprehensive. His knowledge of Alpha Team's operations was detailed, and financial records showed deposits corresponding to significant intelligence breaches over the past year. But identifying the traitor didn't help rescue her captured team. For that, she needed to track the vehicles and determine where Alpha Team was being held. Her years of combat experience had taught her that professional kidnappers always operated from secure facilities that could be identified through careful analysis of operational requirements. Using the base's intelligence databases, Sarah began mapping known enemy safe houses and operational facilities within a 100-kilometer radius. The attackers needed somewhere secure enough to hold 8 elite American prisoners, isolated enough to avoid detection, and well-defended enough to resist rescue attempts. 3 locations met the criteria: an abandoned industrial complex northwest of the base, a series of caves that had been used by various militant groups, and a former Iraqi military installation that had been partially destroyed but retained usable infrastructure. Sarah analyzed each location's tactical advantages and disadvantages, considering factors like defensibility, access routes, and logistics of holding prisoners. The caves were too difficult to access with vehicles and lacked facilities for sophisticated prisoner operations. The industrial complex was too exposed and offered insufficient defensive positions. That left the former Iraqi installation, a facility abandoned since 2003, but retaining the infrastructure necessary for a professional prisoner operation. Sarah faced a critical decision: wait for official rescue operations or attempt solo extraction. Standard protocol called for coordinating with higher command and waiting for properly equipped rescue teams. But her tactical analysis suggested such operations would take days to organize, and intelligence indicated Alpha Team was scheduled for transport to a more permanent location within 18 hours. The decision was simplified by her knowledge of the captured operators. Major Harrison, Master Sergeant Rivera, and the rest of Alpha Team were warriors who'd spent their careers rescuing others from impossible situations. They deserved the same commitment and risk-taking they'd shown for countless others. More pragmatically, Sarah understood she had advantages conventional rescue operations would lack. She knew the captured operators personally, understood their capabilities and likely responses under stress, and could coordinate with them in ways outside rescue teams couldn't match. Sarah spent 3 hours preparing for the mission, assembling equipment from her hidden cache and base resources she could access without triggering security protocols. Her loadout was carefully chosen for solo operation against a heavily defended facility. Lightweight weapons with high accuracy, minimal equipment to maintain mobility, and specialized tools for breaching defensive positions. The Iraqi installation was located 45 kilometers northeast of Camp Phoenix, accessible through desert terrain that provided concealment, but would challenge even her advanced navigation skills. Sarah's plan involved conducting reconnaissance during daylight hours to identify defensive positions and guard rotations, then executing the rescue during pre-dawn hours, when human alertness naturally reached its lowest point. The approach took 8 hours of careful movement through hostile territory. Sarah's combat training allowed her to traverse terrain that would have been impossible for civilian personnel, but even her skills were tested by the challenge of solo operation in enemy-controlled areas. The Iraqi installation was larger than intelligence reports had indicated, with multiple buildings and defensive positions showing significant ongoing use by hostile forces. Sarah counted at least 24 enemy personnel during reconnaissance, all armed with modern weapons and exhibiting discipline that suggested professional military backgrounds. The facility's security was oriented toward preventing escape rather than infiltration, giving Sarah tactical advantages she could exploit. Guards focused inward, watching for prisoner breakout attempts rather than scanning for external threats. Their patrol patterns were predictable, and communication protocols had gaps a skilled infiltrator could use. More importantly, reconnaissance confirmed Alpha Team was being held in the facility's central building, a reinforced structure that had once housed Iraqi communications equipment. The building was heavily guarded, but followed predictable rotation schedules that would create opportunities for a skilled operator. Sarah's assault began at 02:45 hours, when human alertness reached its natural low point and guard rotations were most vulnerable. Her approach was methodical, professional, and absolutely silent. One by one, she neutralized perimeter guards using techniques that left them unconscious but alive. She was conducting a rescue operation, not seeking revenge. Central building security was more challenging, requiring Sarah to use skills developed during her most classified operations. Electronic locks, motion sensors, and communication systems had to be defeated without triggering alarms that would compromise the mission. Her technical training allowed her to bypass these systems systematically, creating access corridors that led directly to where Alpha Team was held. She found the Delta operators in a large room that had once been a communication center. All 8 men were conscious but restrained, their hands zip-tied behind their backs but otherwise unharmed. Major Harrison looked up as Sarah appeared in the doorway, his expression shifting from confusion to recognition to professional respect in 3 seconds. "Mitchell," he whispered, his voice carrying surprise and growing understanding. "Staff Sergeant Sarah Mitchell, 75th Ranger Regiment," she replied quietly, already moving to cut his restraints. "I'm here to take you home." The extraction required every skill Sarah had developed during her special operations career. Moving 8 recently freed Delta operators through hostile territory without vehicles or air support tested her leadership abilities as much as combat skills. But Alpha Team was composed of elite professionals who understood tactical situations and could adapt to changing circumstances rapidly. With restraints removed and tactical awareness restored, the Delta operators transformed from prisoners into predators. Sarah's rescue mission became a coordinated assault by 9 elite warriors against enemy forces expecting to guard prisoners, not fight a full engagement with America's most dangerous special operations personnel. The battle for the Iraqi installation lasted 38 minutes and ended with complete destruction of hostile forces. Sarah's careful reconnaissance and precise assault had created conditions for victory, but it was combined skills of all 9 operators that turned a rescue mission into devastating defeat for enemy forces. Major Harrison approached Sarah as the team prepared to return to Camp Phoenix. "I need to know," he said quietly, "who exactly has been serving my breakfast for the past 2.5 years. Sarah looked at him with the calm expression of someone who'd made peace with her past and present. "Someone who wanted to feed people instead of fighting them," she replied. "Someone who discovered you don't always get to choose which role you play when your people need you." Alpha Team's debrief took 8 hours and resulted in classified reports that would influence special operations doctrine for years. Sarah's performance during the rescue mission earned offers for immediate reinstatement to active duty with any special operations unit, along with promotions that would have represented the pinnacle of a special warfare career. She declined them all. "I'm not ready to be a full-time warrior again," she told Major Harrison during their private conversation. "But I'm also not going to pretend I'm just a dining facility supervisor when my people are in danger. Maybe there's middle ground that works for everyone." The solution came from an unexpected source. The military's special operations community had been developing programs for personnel who could operate in civilian-appearing roles while maintaining readiness for crisis situations. Sarah's combination of skills, proven ability to blend into support roles, and demonstrated willingness to act when necessary made her ideal for such assignments. 6 months later, Staff Sergeant Sarah Mitchell was assigned to a classified program, placing former special operations personnel in support positions at military installations worldwide. Her official position remained dining facility supervisor, but her real mission was providing security oversight and crisis response capabilities for high-value military personnel. She was still serving breakfast at 700, lunch at 1300, and dinner at 1800. But now she was doing it with full knowledge and support of commanders who understood that sometimes the most effective protection came from guardians who appeared exactly like everyone else. Alpha Team continued their missions with confidence that came from knowing their base was protected by someone who'd proven willing to walk through enemy fire to bring them home. They still called her Mitchell, but now it was said with respect, due to a warrior who'd earned her place among them through actions rather than words. Sarah found peace in the balance between her two identities. She was the dining facility supervisor who ensured America's elite warriors were properly fed and ready for missions. She was also the guardian who watched over them with skills that could transform from protective to deadly in seconds when circumstances required. Behind the industrial oven, wrapped in waterproof materials and hidden among cleaning supplies, was a cache of weapons and equipment she hoped never to need again. But hope wasn't a strategy that kept people alive when everything went wrong, and Sarah Mitchell had learned that sometimes the difference between victory and defeat was having the right person in the right place when the impossible became necessary. Late at night, when the kitchen was quiet and the base secure, Sarah would stand at windows and watch stars over whatever country she was serving in that year. She thought about choices that had brought her to this place, the balance she'd found between the warrior she'd been and the guardian she'd chosen to become. She was invisible again, but it was a different kind of invisibility. Instead of hiding from her capabilities, she was using them to protect others in ways no one would fully understand. She was living proof that the most effective warriors weren't always the ones carrying weapons on front lines. Sometimes they were the ones serving meals and watching over their people with quiet strength and unshakable dedication. The operators who came through her food line might never know that the supervisor serving their breakfast was also their most reliable protector. But Sarah Mitchell knew, and that knowledge gave her sense of purpose no amount of recognition could have provided. She'd found her place in the world, not as hunter or victim, not as warrior or civilian, but as something more valuable than either. She was the guardian who watched over guardians, the warrior who protected warriors, the invisible strength that kept America's most visible heroes safe and ready for whatever battles awaited them. If the day ever came when her people were threatened again, when the impossible became necessary and unthinkable became reality, Sarah Mitchell would be ready. Not because she wanted to fight, but because she'd learned that sometimes the greatest act of love was being willing to become dangerous for people you'd sworn to protect. If this story moved you, please hit that subscribe button and share it with others. Help us ensure these tales of quiet courage and hidden heroism reach the people who need to hear them. Thank you for watching Hidden Story. We'll see you in the next story, where another lesson waits to be learned, another truth waits to be revealed, and another reminder awaits that authentic heroism lives quietly among us, waiting for the moment when it must speak up to protect what truly matters.